Hi, good morning. This is Teresa Lamb with Micro Accounting. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today on Sage Intacct and how dimensional accounting can really transform your overall reporting and just ease of use of system. We are going to spend a little bit of time here on a PowerPoint presentation. We've got just a couple of slides here, and then we'll jump over into the product and show you some stuff in there. I do have all of the lines muted, so if you do have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to put those in the chat or question pane on the webinar, and we'll be monitoring those and we'll answer those as we are able to do so. So with that, I am going to go ahead and get started, and we will go through this and see, show you some cool stuff here in Intacct. So, all right. We're going to go. So just a couple of things, key benefits of dimensions, and once we get into the product and I show you what the dimensions are, it'll make a little bit more sense, but some of the key benefits of them are there's really low overhead maintenance. So if you are coming from a system that has what is a fully qualified GL account in your chart of accounts, or a linear chart of accounts, it's also referred to as where you have a portion of the GL account number string that tells it that it's that asset, liability, revenue, expense account, but then you also have other data elements built into that string on your chart of accounts, where maybe it's a department or a line of business or some other reporting function that you need, but currently it's built into that long string, into that fully qualified GL account. In Intacct, what we do is we split all those out and we take those and create those into different dimensions, different fields, so that we're able to easily report on those and easily transact against those. So what that again means is low overhead maintenance on setting those up. So if I need to set up a new department, I set up one new department, that's it. It's then fully available for me to use in the system on all of my reports. I don't have to go in and build out on my chart of accounts and have a lot of setup time to create those GL accounts with that department in there. In addition to kind of that overhead maintenance being much simpler because we don't have to build out that linear or that fully qualified GL account, they're very easy to enter on transactions. So we're not making it harder transaction-wise by splitting those out into those separate fields. We're just going to kind of segregate those so we don't have one long string. We just have different fields that hold that data. That then also allows us to have much more dynamic filtering on reports in our dashboards throughout the system. On every standard report, every financial report, every dashboard that we build in Intacct, we're able to add filtering capabilities on any of those different dimensions. We can control when dimensions are required by GL accounts. So for each specific GL account, when we set that up, we can say it requires a department to ensure you have data integrity and data validation. So if we are looking at a travel expense GL account, we want to make sure that that has a department on it all the time. We just set that as a required field when that GL account is used. So then when any user tries to transact with that GL account and they don't put a department in, they'll get an error message and say that's a required field. So that's on an account by account basis. So with the different dimensions that we have available, you may set different requirements for each of your GL accounts to really give you very controlled and very powerful reporting. We can use dimensions in some of the workflows in the system. So we can use those in AP bill approvals. We can use those in purchasing transaction approvals. So those can also be leveraged as part of workflows and approvals to control what data gets sent around to different managers. So if, for example, we have a department set up in the system and we want to have purchase orders go to the department manager for approval, then we set that as our workflow requirement for purchase orders, where they go to department managers, and then on each department we assign who that manager is, and then the system takes care of that, automatically notifies that user that they have a transaction to approve, and then they can go in, log in, and see what's in their approval queue to approve those. So things that are being handled traditionally in email or paper form, passing things around the office to get approvals, we can really pull that tightly into Intacct by leveraging those dimensions again. And we can use some of the dimensions have some security wrapped around them. So for example, we can control by department what users are able to see. So if a user should not see an admin department, then they won't be able to transact against it. They wouldn't be able to pull any reports or see any data that's in that department. So we can tightly control security around some of the dimensions. Not all of them have that capability, but we can add security tied to some of the dimensions as well. Okay. So just some of the standard dimensions that are out of the box kind of with Sage Intacct are really things that we're tracking kind of a who, where, why situation. So who might be a customer or a vendor. So one of the other powerful things about Intacct and the dimensionality is it treats all of my master data elements that I'm traditionally using in my subledger modules like AP, AR, purchasing, sales order, order entry. It's treating those master data elements as dimensions as well, which then takes those and makes those available to me for all of my reporting as well and filtering. So rather than having someone come back and ask me, you know, how much money did we spend on marketing expenses for this vendor? And we're having to do a lot of work looking at GL detailed transactions in the marketing GL account to see what vendors were used. You know, things that have been traditionally a lot of work for us to filter it out and find, we can much more easily do because that transaction is going to be tied to a vendor. It's tied to a GL account without any extra work on my part by entering the transactions in. And then I can just go and very easily run a report of a combination of marketing expense and that vendor and filter for those two things to get that. So my who, my customers, my vendors, my employees, those are all transactions tied to subledger, master data that's set up and become part of my transaction detail without a lot of extra work. Some things that are where might be, again, departments, locations, project codes, things like that. And why, you know, might be items that we're using on purchase orders or sales orders. And then we have a dimension called class as well. That's very commonly used, you know, just kind of for whatever additional information clients need. We can relabel some of these dimensions as well. So if you don't have something called class, but you have it called line of business or, you know, functional line, something like that, territory, something else that you want to track in your operations, we can relabel that so it's not just generically called class. Okay. And then you'll see again this logical or table-driven, linear, fully qualified, several ways of referring to this GL account structure here in this top image. If I have, you know, one natural account here for printing expense, but maybe I have a couple of funds or locations in here. I've got maybe two of those, 100 and 200, some departments, some projects or grants, and maybe a restriction code, something like that in a environment for a nonprofit. With that different combination of my 5 funds, my 4 grants, 3 programs, 1 restriction, I'm creating 60 GL accounts for printing expenses. That's a lot. So, you know, building those chart of accounts out, again, a lot of maintenance with that, both transactionally when you're setting them up, and a lot of maintenance to keep your reports updated and current. With the Intacct kind of table-driven approach to chart of accounts where we've got the natural accounts and the dimensions, I have 1 GL account for printing expense. That's it. That's all I build in my chart of accounts. And then I have those different areas, my 5 funds, my projects, my restriction codes, but those are all in separate lists. So I don't have to create those combinations of those. And then I can use those throughout the system. So again, if I need to go add a new project or a grant or go add a new department, it's one setup. So much easier to maintain, and also much easier for your reporting as well. Okay. So with that, let me jump over here into my Intacct environment and just kind of show you a little bit of stuff in here for those dimensions. So I'm going to start here with a dashboard, and I'm just going to create this dashboard, pick this dashboard here. It's got some charts and graphs and some performance indicators, and I'll clear it so we can get to current dates here. So you'll see with this, I've got, you know, some what we call performance indicators. Those are quick little revenue numbers that I've pulled in, my total revenue with maybe comparison to prior month, etc. I've got some reports. I've got a revenue trend by customer, a revenue by location, by channel, by item. So I've got some different reports on here. But what I'm able to do with that concept of dimensions is update everything on my dashboard here for one of my dimensions or combinations of my dimensions. So I have in my system here a dimension set up for a location. So if I look at that and say I want to see just for my Austin location and apply that, I may come back with a bunch of zeros. I picked a terrible option here for my location. Let me pick a different one and see if I get some data here. There we go. So I have a location here that's just generically called location 100 here. And I can select that, and then you can see it's updated all of my reports, charts, graphs, performance indicators, everything on here for that specific location. And I can, again, treat all of my master data elements as well. So it's not just restricted to those different dimensions that are traditionally in your chart of accounts right now as part of that string. So it's also taking my customers, my vendors, things like that, and treating those as dimensions. So I can also filter on my customer, and I happen to know my customer reasonable security has some data in here. So I'm going to choose just that customer and apply that. And now you can see here is just that customer's revenue and what location it was in, my channel. So you can see all of my charts, graphs, reports, everything are updated for just that specific customer in that location. I could say all my locations in that customer and see if I get anything different, and maybe are just using that one location for this one. But you can see then I've got, you know, the ability to really be flexible with my reporting and pull any of those combinations I want. Okay. So then, you know, as we show you kind of the reporting and how that works on our dashboards, typically, you know, the question becomes, how hard is it to transact in the system? So we're just going to go over to an AP bill. There's not a whole lot you can do to make AP exciting. You got to pay bills. So we're just going to choose a vendor here and put in my invoice number here. Make sure it's something random. And you'll notice that my GL account is, again, just that traditional natural account. It's not that fully qualified account. It's just that 5-digit number for payroll taxes, or 5-digit number for cost of goods sold, or you know, whatever account I want to use, office supplies. It's just that natural account number. And then I have my fields here for my different dimensions. So I do have all the dimensions turned on in this environment. You necessarily may not use all of them, but you can see that it's not adding burden to my entering this data. I just start populating that. And then if any of these are not used, if I don't need a project on office supplies, as long as I've not set that again as a required field, which if you remember just a little bit ago, I told you by GL account, I can determine which of these are required. So if I don't need that, I can just leave it blank. So I don't have to populate those with a bunch of zeros like you, again, would see in your traditional linear chart of accounts, where if you're not using something, you still got to have data in that field. And so you've got a bunch of zeros in there. So you may have a GL account that is 60340 office supplies and then a whole bunch of zeros after that because you're not requiring other information on there. So in Intacct, we just don't populate it if we don't need it. And then I can submit that. So you can see that entering that data is not any harder than what you're doing now by splitting that out. And in fact, it can be easier because you're not having to populate a bunch of zeros for data elements that you're not using. You can just leave those blank. Okay? In addition to being easier to transact in the system, again, the setup is easier. So if I go through and I need to add a new department in here, I can come in and let's see, I don't know if I may have one already set up as a 999, but we'll try and see. I can just go in and set up my new department. I was afraid of that. 996. There we go. And that's available now for me to use in the system. So it's immediately available on all of my GL accounts. So if I go back to my accounts payable bills, and we'll just enter that same vendor, maybe a new, we'll do some office supplies again. And now my department 996 is immediately available for me to use on my transaction. So within just a matter of seconds, I was able to get that new department set up, make it available to be used throughout the system, and transact against that, which then now also means all of my reporting is going to be updated as well. So then one of the other cool things that I really love about Intacct and the dimensionality concept is that I can really make my reports very powerful. And I don't have to do a lot of maintenance there as well. So you'll notice here I've got this profit and loss by department set up. So as I look at this, I've got the ability to set this report to automatically expand by my department. So that means when I run this report, I'll just run it as of today, that as soon as I have data, it's available and it's creating a column on my report. I did not have to go update or change anything on my report, add a column in there, build anything out, do a lot of maintenance. By using that automatic expansion functionality in the reporting, as soon as there's data, it's going to add that column. So there's my test dimension that I just added today, and there's my $150 and my office supplies right there. So my report is immediately updated to include that department and have that data in there for me. So a lot of really great functionality tied around the dimensions and the reporting capabilities throughout the system. So again, in addition to the financial reports, any of my reports in the system at all, my standard reports, my GL detail, my journals, my trial balance, any report at all, I'm able to filter on any of my dimensions. So if I want to filter and get a trial balance for my test department, I can do that. So there's my office supplies expense and my offsetting accounts payable for entering in a bill. And I have a trial balance by department. And again, any of my dimensions are available on that. So maybe I want a trial balance by vendor. I think I used Massachusetts Department of Revenue there, so I can view that. And there you go. I've got a trial balance by vendor, which is not something you can traditionally do with that linear, fully qualified GL account, because it's not tracking that master data and treating it as a reportable dimension. You can absolutely go run reports in your subledger. You can get an AP ledger by vendor, things like that, but you can't really get a full trial balance, a full financial report by vendor, by customer, without some maintenance and a lot of work. So Intacct just kind of takes the dimensionality a step further by including those master data elements in addition to those things that you traditionally may have built into your chart of accounts string. Okay, so very easy to maintain, very easy to transact against those dimensions, very easy to report against those dimensions, and give you a lot of power in your reporting that you may not traditionally have now.